Look, I'm not saying that Galatasaray is the best team in Group B. All I'm saying is that they look pretty solid to do so, and there was somebody who I know who might have predicted that, so I'm feeling pretty good right now. Anyway, day one of play-ins for Worlds just ended, and I wanted to quickly just talk about my thoughts on the games. First game was Hama Life versus LNG. Kind of went how I thought it would, although it was pretty close for a while in the early and mid game. A lot closer than I thought it would be. I thought that LNG would just kind of stomp, but I mean, at the end of the day, what I thought would happen happened, which is that LNG just kind of snowballed it out and took the win. In my opinion, the best player that game was Icon. He was doing some crazy stuff with the Gragas pick. First of all, I think that the Gragas pick was genius into Tryndamere. I was thinking before World started that Tryndamere was going to be a very strong mid laner, and I still think he is. But the Gragas worked really well. Like with the phase rush, Gragas was able to lane so well against the Tryndamere because Tryndamere can't go in because then you just do the trade pattern with WQE and then you phase rush out. He was keeping even in CS with Chovy the entire time, and then I think that what really like just sealed the deal for me with Icon's performance was that his second item. You would think that you would pick up Azanya's Hourglass for the defensive item, but he actually went for a death cap, which I was a little bit questioning it at first, but it turned out that the death cap worked out really well. And then his third purchase of Chemtech Putrefier really impressed me because like the next obvious choice would be Morel and Namicon. And I mean, if you look at the amount of damage that the Gragas did, you have to think to yourself that if he has Everfrost, Morello, and Zanyas, that he's just not getting the damage down that ended up helping them win the game. I mean, Chemtech was a really cool item for him to go because he can proc it himself since he has a self heal, so he has access to the grievous wounds every single time he uses an ability, guaranteed pretty much. It also gives him the ability haste, and it's cheaper. So I really like the purchase. I like all the purchases he made. I really thought that he carried a lot of the team fights with his ultimate, the picks from his ultimate. I mean, overall, I thought that Hanwha Life had outdrafted LNG at first, but the Tryndamere, they just drafted so much CC against the Tryndamere that Chovy just like could not get onto the back line. The next match was the only match that I predicted incorrectly. I was 7 for 8 on my predictions, and the prediction that I got wrong was Infinity versus Red Kalunga. Now, I gotta say that I was very surprised that Red won. I, going into the tournament, was pretty set on the idea that Red Kalunga was the worst team in the tournament, being the sixth seed, not facing pain on their side of the bracket at all. I just didn't think they had any accomplishments. But they came out and won. I'm not quite ready to go back on my wording and say that Red is not the worst team, but they did beat Infinity, and I'm interested to see how they do tomorrow. And the reason why I'm interested to see how they do tomorrow is because Infinity played Hanwha Life Esports today, and Infinity didn't do half bad. Like they showed some life, and I was actually pretty sure that they had the upper hand for at least a portion of the mid game. And then so when Red Kalunga play Hanwha Life Esports tomorrow, I'll really get to make that comparison and see how good they are. The only reason why I'm not confident in saying that Red Kalunga is better than Gillette Infinity is because I feel like Gillette Infinity had the upper hand in that game and then just like chain inted and threw it away. So that was a little bit of a weird situation. In that game though, the star player was definitely Guigo on the side lanes. He was able to draw so much pressure with the 1v1. It was like he was the reason why Infinity was having trouble with macro because they just could not they did not have a champion who was able to match Guigo on the side lane without dying, and it just made the game really hard to play out. The game after that was LNG versus Peace. I mean, this was like the most uneventful game of the day. I think it was just LNG smashing Peace. I put player of the game as Ale, just because he went like I think it was like 8-1 in Fiora. But you could have also given it to Icon. I just didn't want to say that Icon was the best player in both. But Icon showed off why he's, in my opinion, the best LeBlanc in the world. The way that he was just maneuvering in and out, he created so much pressure at all times. He really is good at playing around vision. The game after that, Hanwha Life Esports versus Gillette Infinity, was, like I mentioned earlier, a very close game. It was, in my opinion, the most fun game to watch of the tournament because Hanwha Life Esports and Infinity came out. They were pretty even. Infinity got some kills here and there. They picked off Chovy's Azir with an Amumu Q from Ackerman, a flash Q. So Infinity definitely showed some life against Hanwha Life. So I really appreciated that game. But in the end, Hanwha Life won, and the reason why they won was because it was off the back of Deft. I mean, Deft was the carry of that game. Like I said, Chovy had one of the worst games I've ever seen from him. He was 0-2 for the majority of the game on Azir. He was getting picked out. I mean, he was up in CS like he always is because he's the best mid laner in terms of laning. But then the next game of the day was UOL versus DFM, and this game's also pretty black and white. DFM kind of ran over UOL, and the main reason for that was steal on the Talon. The Talon was getting all the early kills and facilitating all of the plays. He had this one play where he noticed that Unicorns of Love were caught out in top lane, and then so he like maneuvered his way across half the map over different walls. And then on the last wall, he dropped a control ward behind their team. Nala TP'd onto that ward, and then they were able to successfully cut them off. That was a really fun play to watch. And then the next game, which is honestly the game that I was the most worried about, that was Galatasaray versus Beyond Gaming. I mean, like I said in my prediction video, I put Galatasaray as the 11th best team in Worlds, which is a pretty bold claim back then. But I did follow all of the minor regions, and I was convinced without a doubt that Galatasaray was the strongest minor region team. I'm not surprised that they beat Beyond Gaming, but I'm obviously glad that they did because that means that my prediction was right. I had played the game for that being Mojito. I just felt like he performed really well in that game when it mattered, getting all of the plays down. And then after that, we had DFM versus Cloud9, which is probably the game that most people were excited to watch. That game was kind of a stomp. I mean, what ended up happening was that Fudge gapped Evi so hard that the rest of Cloud9 were just able to outpressure and win. And I ended up having Perks as the player of the game for that one over Fudge because Fudge did end up getting caught out once and then almost getting caught out a second time, and then Perks had a super pop-off performance on Sylas. I do wish that Cloud9 had shifted the Sylas into the support role because they drafted the Sylas, but then they drafted Leona next. I wish they had just moved Sylas to support so they could give Perks a later pick. But I also recall Bobkin saying LeBlanc's most unplayable matchup was Sylas, so I understand from a counter pick perspective why you'd put Sylas mid. And also Perks is just notoriously really good with Sylas. All makes sense there. And then the last match of the game, Galatasaray and Unicorns of Love, was, you have a solid argument to say that that was even a bigger stomp than LNG and Peace. I mean, Galatasaray did not show any holes. And even Crazy, like in game one when Crazy was on Kennen, like you could kind of feel it a little bit that like he died 3 times. Some of his deaths were unneeded. Some of his deaths were because he positioned wrong or got caught out or read the map wrong. In game 2, he had none of that, which is really like, I said this before. I said that if Galatasaray had a strong weak side top laner, and I mentioned Hanabi at the time, that Galatasaray would probably be a quarterfinals level team. If Crazy keeps on playing the way that he did in game 2, then Galatasaray might be able to cause some chaos in a group stage. I still don't have full faith in Crazy. I still get the feeling every single time I watch Crazy, every single time that I see an enemy team shifting towards his lane, I still get a little bit worried that he's gonna die. I don't have like full confidence in him. But you know, he played very well. Although, I mean, obviously the player of that game was Balulu. He went 5-0-13 on Twisted Fate. Massive kill participation, absolutely destroying everybody. But yeah, I mean, day one went almost exactly how it would go, with the exception of Infinity kind of throwing their lead to Red Kalunga. But I will make some predictions for day 2 while I'm at it. So Peace versus Hanwha Life. Hanwha Life is gonna win. Red versus LNG. LNG is gonna win. Infinity versus Peace. Infinity is gonna win. Red versus Hanwha. Hanwha's gonna win. Beyond Gaming versus Cloud9. Beyond Gaming's gonna win. Galatasaray versus Detonation Focus Me. Galatasaray is gonna win. Beyond Gaming versus Unicorns of Love. Beyond Gaming's gonna win, and then Cloud9 versus Galatasaray. Galatasaray is gonna win that. And that's going to do it for tomorrow's predictions, and then I'll hopefully have time to make another video like this tomorrow once I'm done watching all of those games. And that's it.